Kris Hampton, thanks for being here. What do you do? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Let me redo that and I'll let you talk. Kris Hampton, thanks for being here.
I am always excited to have my voice come across a microphone, especially when it's talking to you. So, very psyched.
I know. We should just we should live closer together or just do this once a month. But
Fact.
I don't know if that'd work. Yeah. Can you talk about what you do for a living first, and then maybe we'll move backwards from there?
That's a really good question. Technically, I suppose I'm a climbing coach for a living. And that certainly is what pays my bills, is running a company of coaches. We sell training plans and products that can help climbers become better. Better climbers, better people, better humans, better partners, all of those things. That's sort of our focus. And that does not give you the full scope of what I like to think I do for a living. Even though I don't make a lot of money doing the other things, podcasting and making things is certainly my passion right now. Whether it's music, which I've done for a lot of years, or writing, audio storytelling, any kind of thing that I think I can put out there and tell a story that serves the community in some way is essentially how I consider myself right now. A storyteller in several mediums, as well as a coach who's trying to help climbers become better people.
Which I guess could be a story they tell themselves anyway, in some broad
Totally.
definition of it. So
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. So that maybe that's why it feels so right to me.
Yeah. You're just convincing them they can be better in some way, which is the type of story. Do you want to say the name of the company that you?
That's probably a good idea. The coaching company is Power Company Climbing. We also do a popular climbing podcast through there, a couple actually, Power Company Podcast and Breaking Beta. And then I have a company called Plugtone Audio that is a podcasting collective for other podcasts in the outdoor space. And we help create podcasts and one-off projects, audio art projects for brands and for ourselves. And that the channel where I sort of put all of my audio art projects is Plugtone Outdoors. You can get those anywhere you get podcasts. And I have another podcast on there called Hip Hop Taught Me Everything that I do with my friend Devin Dabney, which is a podcast about the lessons learned one song at a time. And it's just really fun to reflect on those things. Some of that I think we'll be doing today as well.
Yeah. I'm going to list off a couple of the other jobs I know you've had, and maybe you can add in a couple that I've missed. Event MC.
Yep, still do it.
Actual hip hop MC. I would list as a job.
Still sort of doing it.
Yeah. Professional mural painter.
Not doing it anymore, but yes, definitely. That was a big section of my life.
Was it country dance or line dance instructor?
I was a line dance instructor. I'm furious you just brought that. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I love that part of my life because it was a like, I'm falling out of love with hip hop. Let me go in this other direction and see what kind of fun I can have over there. And it was a huge fun teaching country line dancing.
Gymnastics coach.
I was a gymnastics coach for many years.
I think you also worked in like a semi truck wash for a while that I know about.
I did. I worked in a skating rink around the same time.
Okay.
I was the chicken who did the chicken dance, and I was a floor guard.
That's what else is on your list of jobs?
I mean, I've worked in factories a little bit. I worked. My first job was at a fruit and vegetable market, I lied about my age to get the job, and I would just ride my skateboard there every day when I was 14. And I worked there for a lot of years, actually. I would go to the big market downtown and pick up fruits and vegetables in the mornings and with the owner and bring those back. And I basically ran the place by the time I was 15, 16 for large portions of the day, which was fun and scary. And I guess maybe the biggest job I have, which makes me absolutely no money and just costs me a lot of money, is I'm a dad to a 25-year-old and a 6-month-old, and a grandpa to a 2-year-old. So,
Yes, that catches us up. And originally from Cincinnati, Ohio.
yes, sir.
Is Cincinnati in the South or the Midwest or the East Coast?
It's kind of nowhere. I've always said Midwest, and I think for my purposes that fits because I see it through a hip-hop lens, and the music that comes out of Cincinnati is probably most influenced by Midwestern hip-hop. There's definitely some East Coast, some Southern, but I feel like it relates more closely to like what came out of Chicago and Detroit.
That's a really good take on it, actually. I hadn't thought of that. That
To hell with
explains-
geography. It's all about hip-hop.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, that's a form of geography, right? Or a subset of geography.
Yeah, totally.
Well, let's get into your favorite pieces of. Let's get into your the show and tell portion of the show here. So we're gonna go in sort of chronological order. I appreciate you putting these in chronological order. I didn't have to do a lot of
Couldn't help
homework.
myself.
Yeah, well, it just makes sense. Then I didn't have to ask you. Your first thing on your list is the cassette single of a song called "The Show" by Dougie Fresh. I think featuring Slick Rick, or maybe just Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, with Lottie Dottie on the B side.
It might have been Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew.
Oh yeah, you're right. It totally was. Yeah. Can you talk about discovering that? Like, when did that actually come into your life? Was it right after it came out?
It was probably pretty close to when it came out, which was, I think, 85, 86, somewhere around there is when I found it. A couple of years earlier, I had a neighbor move in who listened to hip-hop, and it was a very white, racist neighborhood. There was no hip-hop. I'd never heard anything like it. And he brought, I believe, a Fat Boys tape was the first thing I ever heard. And I listened to that and was just couldn't believe what I was hearing. It spoke to me in a way different than what my parents' music had or any of the music I'd heard had. You know, my mom listened to rock and oldies, and that was it. And this felt new and exciting. So what I would do is I would ride my bicycle to this record store. It was about a 45-minute bike ride. I was totally not allowed to do this. But I would do it often and ask for hip-hop. And they would get hip-hop in just to give to me. And that's where I got the cassette single of The Show, which the B-side was Lottie Dottie. And I remember picking it up and putting it into my Walkman and riding home with it. And by the time I got home, I knew that because of some choice words in the song Lottie Dottie, that the tape was going to get taken away from me if my parents heard it. So as soon as I got home, I made a bunch of copies of it and hid them in my closet because I knew that it would get taken away.
This is like coming home with like a bag of weed and breaking it up into smaller bags so you can like just like stash them all over the house just in case you take. Not that I've ever done that, but
the 11-year-old version.
So sonically, The Show is a really interesting song because I think it's live, right? The single is live, and it's beatboxing.
I'm not sure if it's done live or not. I mean, it feels live. even if it's not done live. Like, it feels like a live performance. So it very well may be. I'm not positive if it is or isn't. But it did feel that way. It felt like a performance. And it includes rapping, beatboxing, and scratching, which was like my entrance into, here are these elements of hip hop. I was breakdancing at the time, so now I'm like, I've got them all now, minus graffiti. So
yeah, I know it's interesting how that's those sorts of things are of such a time period, and like disappeared over the years, and like, no one scratches on records anymore, So how much do you think this single cost? Do you think it was like $1.99?
I bet it was. I bet it was right about that. And I had saved up a lot of money as a kid. I was selling greeting cards. I would like walk door to door and sell greeting cards. And I was a cute kid, and I was like, a personable little kid. I liked talking to people, and so I sold a lot of greeting cards, and I would save my money. And that's how I was able to go to this record store like every week or two and buy a new tape. And I heard a lot of hip hop that way, just buying these tapes. And after, my dream, my like vision came true with this one. The tape did get taken away from me multiple times. I kept the original stashed. I wish I still had it, but I don't. I kept the original stashed, and I would play my copies, and my stepdad kept taking the copies away. And he like rifled through my room trying to find them, but I had this little hidden compartment in my closet where he couldn't find them. And that was like this moment that was like, this is this thing that adults or people in this neighborhood or something don't want here. But for me, it seems important, so I have to protect it. That's how it felt to me. And I did that a number of times over the years with other tapes. Like when NWA came out, I was like, this is for sure getting taken away from me. Second one, but I'm going to play it out loud regardless.
Do you think the people had a problem with the profanity, or was it more of a racial thing, or was it, I know I remember people used to say back in the day, like, it's not music, there's no singing in it. And then like 30 years later, here it is, like hip hop's mostly singing anymore, with auto tune and like
That's
all
true.
it's like really blurred at this point, which is so funny. And then old guys like me are like, there's too much singing, it's not hip hop.
Exactly.
So funny. Anyway,
Exactly.
what do you think they're like? Specifically, maybe even your stepdad, was he just like not like, you can't listen to things with the F word on them, or like?
Well, that was what he said, but a lot of the music they were listening to out loud in front of me was also doing that. And they had no problem with it. So in retrospect, I have to believe it was a race or culture thing, that they just didn't understand it, they didn't connect with it, and they don't want me connecting with it. I have to believe that.
Do you think then that the fact that nobody wanted you to listen to it led you to be more into it? As a sort of rebellion thing? Yeah.
Absolutely. I suspect I would have continued to be into it regardless, just because of the way it connected with me. Like I have a very distinct memory of hearing hip hop for the first time. I was on my sidewalk, and we had a magnifying glass burning ants, and he played this tape. And I have this distinct memory of thinking, whoa, this is something very cool that I've never heard. And maybe that's part of, it's not my parents' thing, it's my own thing. I'm discovering it, so to speak. But then definitely because they were like, you can't listen to this, I was going to listen to it more.
Yeah, I think about it, like the word that comes to mind of me discovering it in my own life is exotic. Like it was people I was never going to meet, talking about these places I was never going to go, and these things I would never experience. And it was like a way of traveling, sort of. And then, so then you have exotic, and then also forbidden by, people like your parents and Tipper Gore, who led to
Yeah.
those explicit lyrics labels being put on music, which I would black out with a black magic marker, thinking I was being all sneaky. And I asked my mom like 5 years ago, like, did you notice? Did you know I was doing that? She's like, yeah, we knew. We didn't really care. I mean, I know they care. I mean, the worst it got was she told me to like throw away Wu-Tang 36 Chambers because she heard the torture skit through my bedroom door. But yeah, it was just so much more interesting than the stuff that we were being, shown in like the rest of the stuff that was on the radio. It was like so interesting sonically and everything.
Yeah, I agree. That's how it felt for me too. It just resonated with me on a totally different level. And as far as the like explicit parts of it, it was pretty clear to me early on that like I'm allowed to read books that talk about murder and these scary bloody things. I'm allowed to watch movies that have these things in them. I mean, when I was like, I don't know what year it came out, but when Eddie Murphy Raw came out, I watched it with my parents. And they're just like, he won't get any of this, And all those things were okay, but for some reason hip hop was not.
Yeah.
And that was pretty clear to me. Like, this is a double standard. I'm not going for it.
That's really interesting. That's a good segue into our next one, which is Check the Rhyme single or Low End Theory, the album, 1991, 1992 for you, which is, I think, like, as far as it's pretty benign as far as like controversial rap stuff, right? Like totally the normal benign things people complain about. But yeah, Tribe Called Quest, they're not really talking about killing people. They're not really, it's definitely further down the spectrum of objectifying women or, not that much profanity. But how did this come into your life when it came out?
Man, this is like one of my most distinct memories of my entire life, I think, was hearing Q-Tip for the first time. I used to tape this radio show it was a DJ named Icy D in Cincinnati, and it was the only radio show at the time that played hip-hop, and it was at like 2 a.m. or something. And I would set my boombox up with my radio playing and the tape in there already with play, record, pause, and I would set my alarm so that I'd wake up right when the ICD show was coming on, and I would just hit pause and go back to sleep, so that it was recording as much as could fit on the tape. And then the next morning on the way to school on the bus, I would listen to the tape, and I would always hear something new. I was hearing some interesting Cincinnati hip hop, people I would later meet, and I was hearing, bigger nationwide things. And I remember I would sit on the bus and I would lean my head against the seat in front of me with my headphones on and just listen. And I remember when Check the Rhyme first came on and when Q-Tip starts rapping, I was like, what the fuck is this? This is something totally different than anything I've ever heard. And I think I was already sort of keying into the like Afrocentricity sort of wave that was happening in hip hop at the time. It was probably around this time that I was like painting Africa on people's jeans in high school. I was a junior in high school when this happened, I believe. And it just felt like something entirely new to me. I loved his voice. I loved his cadence. It now looking back, it feels like jazz, which it obviously is very influenced by. And it was one of the first times I heard jazz being done in hip hop. So it was just so sonically so different.
Yeah. So you had no knowledge of the first Tribe album at that point.
You know what? I believe I had heard a little of it, but it never struck me as something entirely different. Like, I'm pretty sure I had heard Left My Wallet in El Segundo and Bonita Applebum.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm pretty sure I heard them in art class. There was a kid named Chris Markey, I think, who ultimately tried to steal one of my pieces in art class. I still haven't forgiven him for that. But I think that's where I first heard Tribe. But it just didn't affect me the way that Check the Rhyme did. There's something about the way Q-Tip raps on that song that to me feels like later when we hear Snoop Dogg on the Shiznit, which is, from Doggy Style, and it's like this perfect flow over this really sparse beat that just feels like water flowing, and that's how Q-Tip seemed to me. Different than the like choppy cadence of most rappers.
Like almost effortless and not
exactly
doesn't have much to prove, maybe in some way.
Yep, exactly. He wasn't putting on a rap voice, Like I was already rapping at this time, and I had a rap voice. I was growly in my rap voice, and Q-Tip was not doing that. He was. It just, like you said, it felt effortless.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard about rap voices is I think there's a movie called The Art of Rap that Ice-T put together, and basically spotlighted a bunch of different MCs. And Be Real from Cypress Hill.
Yeah.
Used to rap in his normal voice, and somebody was like, you just sound like you don't sound like anything, you got to do something. And so he did this nasally effect to his voice, which made him extremely distinct, and everybody knows what he sounds like.
It's so wild to hear him talk.
But yeah, like you think of Q-Tip, and like I would say even Rakim is the same way, where it's just like they're just basically they're not performing. This is how they talk, this is how they like, and it just seems so effortless. There's another story about rock. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, it was different than the like Public Enemy, the KRS Ones, who had like these big booming voices and were preaching to you. This felt more like a conversation with you. It was so different. It still feels so different to me than the vast majority of rappers.
Did you feel, this may be completely off base, but did you feel that Tribe Called Quest being like sort of jazzy, less aggressive hip hop, did you feel more okay listening to it as a white guy as opposed to more in your face acts like Public Enemy? Like Public Enemy, to me, was such a huge fan, but it kind of felt like it wasn't my music. It felt like I was kind of dipping in and being like, these lyrics are in no way ever about me or my experience in the world. I love it, and I get it, but it wouldn't something like I would not be blasting it out of the car driving around so much. And Tribe, I maybe felt better about that. Does that ring true with you? You know what?
Maybe so. I hadn't ever really thought of it like that, but maybe so. There's definitely some truth there. And, I would definitely listen to Public Enemy, and I was a big fan of Paris. Do you remember Paris?
Yeah.
He was really militant. I was listening to the first Paris album while painting a mural in a church once. And the pastor came in and just his eyes got really wide. But you're right. I think I listened to that stuff mostly in private, and I'm not sure anyone that was in my like small, growing at the time hip hop circle knew I was a fan of Paris. It was like that was kept under wraps. Public Enemy a little bit, KRS-One a little more, and then I could definitely be very open about being a Tribe fan.
Yeah. Yeah. And they still that's the stuff that I still put on. Like I definitely need to own that record and put that on. Like it was a slow burn for me. It was like, I think I sort of got into him through the Scenario video on MTV, and then bought the Low End Theory on cassette and was like, oh, and it just kind of really found a home, and was like something I ended up playing over and over and over again because of how mellow and interesting it was and layered and all those things. So yeah.
We still play it in the house quite a bit. Annalisa puts it on the record player, maybe twice a month or something.
I mean, as far as opening tracks go on any album ever, I feel like it's Excursions is the first song, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. back in the days when I was a teenage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just announces itself in such a great fashion. It's hard to not just want to put that on.
Yeah, and it's those years for me as well, like junior to senior in high school. Those years are definitely cemented in like the music of those years is cemented in my memory, and I have a lot of people have memories associated with smell. I don't think I have a single smell memory, but I have tons of sound memories, and that era of music, the like Tribe Called Quest, the Chronic when it came out, Doggy Style when it came out, those moments of riding around in cars, listening to those songs are some of my most indelible images and memories.
That's interesting to hear you say that. There's a YouTuber, I've watched some of his stuff, Nathan Zed, and he talks about, he's a younger guy, he's like in his 20s, I think, and he talks about music is only as good as the memory associated with it. And when you're young, you're having experiences to the music, even if it is just riding around the car with your buddies. But like nowadays, if I'm listening to music, most of the time I'm sitting in front of a computer trying to write or trying to draw or trying to work, and it's like, well, yeah, no wonder I'm not into new music anymore. All I'm doing is like looking at spreadsheets and like trying to tap out words. Like I love doing that, but it's not a fun memory that you're associating this visual with, like riding the school bus or like getting high with your buddy, or whatever. So,
what I've done lately that I really like the last few years, anytime a new album comes out that I want to listen to, I save it until I'm either going on a long drive or I'm going to go hiking somewhere, searching for boulders in the mountains or whatever. And sometimes it's a little scary to have headphones on while you're walking through the woods. But that's the way I consume new music now. And it does. You're exactly what you said. It sort of creates memories. Like I can remember where I was when I heard Kendrick Lamar's Rich Spirit off the Mr. Morale album. I remember where in the woods I was when that song came on, and the beat sounded like a Tribe beat, and a modern day Tribe beat, and I was like, whoa. And those memories stick with me better than if I'm doing exactly what you are doing, because that's what I would be doing normally, turning it on while I'm trying to work.
Yeah, and then you're seeking out music that's not going to distract you too, which is also not as have you ever been back to that church you painted with the Paris album playing?
Well, it was a church I went to. I got kicked out of that church when I was 16. They asked me to not return.
Oh, what's that? Why?
I asked too many questions.
Oh, yeah.
I was
tough.
like, I loved the stories in the Bible. And so I had read it multiple times, and I was starting to see these inconsistencies, both in the stories and in the way the pastor and the Sunday school teachers talked about it. So I would ask these questions about the inconsistencies, and inevitably the Sunday school teachers would call the pastor down, and you have to talk to him. He's got another one of those questions. And eventually they just got so flustered. They were like, we can't have these distractions every single Sunday, so we'd like it if you just didn't come back.
Wow. How did you feel?
Maybe vindicated. Like, I just felt like, all right, I've been doing the right thing. Asking questions has been right, and now I can leave here and feel okay about it.
That's interesting. I think a lot of people would be like, okay, I guess I'm going to hell now. Okay.
I mean,
different relationship. That's fantastic. Okay. Next thing is To Kill a Mockingbird. And you said in text to me that this could be either the book or the movie.
Yeah, I got them both around the same time.
Okay.
It was high school again. Several of these things happened around the same point in my life. And it was also around the time in my life when I didn't have a good home situation, so I left home around this same time and just bounced around with friends. I lived in a park one summer, and school was like my anchor. So To Kill a Mockingbird was a school reading, like a summer reading project for English class. I was in the AP English, and over the summer you had to read and do these book reports, and To Kill a Mockingbird was one of those book reports. And I watched the movie at the same time because I'm like, I can shortcut this process if I just watch the movie instead of reading the book. But I fell in love with the character of Atticus Finch, which I think a lot of people did. I think he's been called, the best literary hero multiple times or something. And it felt to me like he was doing something that I needed or wanted to do. He was willing to stand up despite the culture that he lived in, and to do it in a really public way. And that to me felt important because I grew up in this very white neighborhood around a bunch of people who were very racist. I got in a lot of fights because I dressed like a black kid and, dressed like hip hop culture. And it just felt like that I needed to take that up as my mantle, I don't know if that's a good lesson to have gotten from it. My stance has softened a little bit in some ways over the years, but that's what I got from it initially. And there's a scene in the movie and in the book where he's in the courtroom, and the upper balcony is where all the black folks sat in the courtroom, and they stay after the trial's over. And as he walks out, he's packing up his things, and as he walks out, they stand up and they just appreciate that he was helping, and that scene was just etched in my memory for a long time.
Do you think that, like you said, your stance is softened, but do you think it still affects some of the things you do as an adult and or as a father and a grandfather at this point?
1,000%. The only part of my stance that's softened is being as public about it. I still definitely go that direction sometimes when I feel it's necessary, but now I feel like there's more work that can be done in the background. And actually, I've since read Go Set a Watchman, which is Harper Lee's follow-up, essentially. And that book exposes all these flaws in Atticus. It essentially paints him as a racist, and a lot of people got really upset about that. And I'm like, it's the South, and of course he was going to be a racist to some degree. And painting those flaws was really important to me. Like, it helped me understand, I have my own, racist tendencies that have been built into my culture and my privilege, and understanding those things is a lifelong pursuit. It's going to take my entire life. I'm going to be figuring those things out for my entire life.
Ideally, yeah, right.
Yeah. And if, as far as a father and grandfather, I had my daughter watch the movie when she was fairly little, and she watched it with me and was confused, like, why are they treating him this way? And I had to explain to her. And I think that moment helped her not overlook things, not look past things, and be okay with standing up, coming to me when she sees something that doesn't look right. So I think it certainly influences me as a father, grandfather, human partner, friend, all of those things. It was a necessary thing for me to see when I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about like 2020 and the George Floyd protests and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I should do something. And I ended up doing a lot of different things. Some more active out front, like going to protest marches and stuff like that. And then other things that were just like, maybe I just need to help with money or fundraising or uplifting such and such voice or whatever. But the thing that sort of spurred me onto it was this feeling from being a teenager and like, you can't have listened to all these Public Enemy records for so long and then just not do anything. Like, it's so the 15-year-old you would be so sad that that's what you ended up being, you know?
Totally. What would Chuck D say about what I'm doing right now?
Right. You know? So, yeah.
Chuck
so
D is the voice in all of our heads.
Right? Or the like, you know, your dreams of what you wanted to be when you grew up, and then you're like, I didn't just want to be like not like 15-year-old me would be so disappointed in me if I didn't just do something. And I think that's kind of what you're saying about To Kill a Mockingbird in some ways.
Yeah, and it
important.
You know, and I know for a lot of people of the, you know, and it's been going this direction for a long time, of the like short attention span generation, which is maybe just all of time. You know, our attention spans are just shortening more and more and more. I know reading those novels is hard for a lot of people, and they don't want to watch these old black and white movies. And years later, I approached a friend of mine who was a producer, a beat maker, and I was like, I want to make a project. You're the person to make this project with because your beats are really musical. That's how they feel to me. And, you know, they're cinematic. And what I want to do is make an album called To Mock a Killingbird that essentially follows the themes of To Kill a Mockingbird. Well, then, like 2 weeks after me pitching this idea, the woman who was DJing for me at the time, her name was Digital Kate, she was in Chicago and found the vinyl soundtrack for To Kill a Mockingbird, the Elmer Bernstein score. And she handed it to me. I immediately handed it to Il Poetic, the producer, and said, I want all the beats made from this. Sample this for every beat. And here's the outline I want. You know, I want this like setup beat. I want this beat that builds anticipation. I want this really, you know, big dramatic, thematic sort of anthem beat. You know, and I gave him all this outline, and he delivered the beats to me, and it took me, I don't know, 5 or 6 years to write to it because they were so beautiful as he delivered them. I just couldn't feel like I was matching it. It took me a long time to write to it. And when I did, I really love what I ended up with. And it's on Spotify, probably illegally, but it's on there.
Wouldn't they flag that though if it was illegally? Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure it's illegal. I'm sure that soundtrack is copyrighted. It's not old enough to be in public domain. You know,
yeah.
Even though it's essentially classical music.
They're gonna sue you for like 57 cents from your royalties from
exactly.
Spotify, right? Like, yeah.
We'll settle up if they do.
Yeah. 1 billable lawyer hour or something like that. It's great. Yeah, I was gonna bring that up, but I'm glad you just brought it up. That's great. Okay. Your next one, almost everybody almost everybody's probably seen this painting, Edward Hopper's painting, Nighthawks. Can you describe what it looks like?
Yeah, it's from the outside of a diner looking in. It's like dark, reds and greens all around the diner, and then it's dark outside and it's lit up inside the diner. And there in the diner, there is behind the counter a male figure who is like the soda jerk. And then at the counter on the left side are a man and woman talking, and you can see their faces. And then with his back to you at the counter is a solo male figure sitting there. And it's an all glass diner that's like wraps around a corner, kind of this classic 1950s style diner that you would imagine. It feels very lonely.
Yeah, and it's in the Art Institute of Chicago, I think, right now.
Yep. Yep.
Where did you see it in this? You have the date on here, 1991, 1992. A very fertile time for your...
Yeah. I don't know how I first saw it. I don't remember where the first time I saw it was, but I know when I saw it, there was just some quality about it that similar to, when I heard hip hop for the first time, that just spoke to me in a different way. Some quality about the loneliness he was depicting obviously in a city. You can tell this place is probably bustling during the day, but these are the hours when no one is there. And something about that spoke to me. And as I looked more and more into Hopper's work, he does this a lot. There's a lot of loneliness in his work, and these really amazing, rich, dark colors with one point of light somewhere in the painting. So I ended up my junior and senior year of high school for the International Baccalaureate Art Program. I did a 2-year study of Hopper, and it was spurred on by Nighthawks. So I don't remember when I first saw it, but I do know that it resonated with me on a different level.
And what happened to you besides the International Baccalaureate study? What happened to you because of that painting then?
Well, you know what? As I started studying Hopper more and more, I realized that particularly in this painting, I identify with all 3 male figures in the painting. And for me, it's like I really love deep conversation with a person and I prefer to do them all in person on my podcast. So I love that style of sitting next to someone or across from someone, looking at them, talking to them for hours. I love that. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And that's what I imagine those two, the couple, the male and female figures sitting at the counter whose faces we see, that's what I imagine they're doing. They've escaped this bustling city in the hours when everyone else is asleep, and they're in there only paying attention to each other. And then the solo man, a lot of my life has been spent trying to escape the bustle, finding a way within all of this chaos to be still. I create the chaos for myself a lot of the time, but I still need to find a still place inside of it. And that's what I imagine that solo figure at the counter is doing. And then the soda jerk is this observer. He's listening in to the conversation that the couple are having. He's trying to ask the solo man enough questions that it doesn't seem like he's prying, but he's constructing a story for himself of what this solo guy's story is. And I love to be the observer. So for me, I just identify with all 3 of them, and it depends on the day. When I look at the painting, I've walked to it and looked at it multiple times in Chicago. Whenever I've been in Chicago, I go to the museum. I go look at that painting, and inevitably I'm standing there much longer than I think I am staring at this painting. And it depends on the day which figure which figure feels like me in the painting. It's always one of them.
Yeah. Did you ever work in restaurants or in retail?
I worked in a pizza place for a number of years. I guess we didn't say that in my job. I managed a pizza place for quite a number of years at the same time as I was teaching country line dancing, actually. Because I would leave the country bar and I would go to the pizza place knowing that there was no way I was getting up early enough to come and open the pizza place in the morning. So I would lay out the hot bags, the big thick bags that pizza delivery guys carry. I would lay those out and I would sleep on the bottom level of a prep table on hot bags, and I would just get up in the morning and start working.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, there's your life as the soda jerk, I think. I don't know. One of the things I miss about working in food service or retail is those micro interactions you get with people where it could turn into something, it could turn into a bigger conversation. Most of the time it doesn't, but you get to know so many people's stories by just like this sort of, necessary interaction that you have with them. You have to talk in order to take their order or find them the thing they're trying to buy or whatever. And then you get a little bit of their story, and we just don't, working from home, we just don't get that. Like, you have to go seek it out. And
totally,
I don't know. It's a fun way to experience the world, I think.
That's also one of the reasons I still enjoy doing events. emceeing events is because I get to have a lot of those little micro interactions with people. I get my fill of deep conversations through the podcast, but then you're right, those little micro interactions are so important.
Yeah, real jobs, so overrated or underrated. So last one, you're doing good on time.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Last one. I would say this is the one I'm the least familiar with. The Doomtree album, No Kings, from, I don't know. You have 2011, 2012.
Yeah, I think I found it at the end of 2011.
Okay.
So through that winter, it was a staple.
Okay. Why was it important to you then, besides the fact that it's Midwest hip hop?
Well, a couple of reasons. Like the collective of Doomtree, I think, is really important in that they're radically differing styles that are all coming together to create this thing. But then also because my oldest daughter, Katie, was a teenager at the time, and my now wife had moved to Cincinnati and was living with us. And this collective had all the right pieces in place that we could all relate to. And as a result of that, we went to a bunch of different Doomtree shows together. Caitlin had just turned old enough to get into these shows, and we would find places where we could all go together. So I don't know exactly how many shows, but quite a few, whether it was Doomtree or the individuals doing their own solo shows. So it was really fun to connect with both of them over this music that I loved. Annalisa was born in Wyoming, grew up in Wyoming, didn't know much about hip hop. And then Caitlin getting to go to her first live events. Like, she had been to a festival called Scribble Jam that we had in Cincinnati a bunch of times, but was still a little kid while that was happening. So then the Doomtree shows when she was an older teenager were huge for her. They were like the first shows where she gets to talk to these artists that she really admires, and be really nervous around them. And now she has these photos and these memories of going to these shows and meeting these artists, and we would travel, we would drive to Minneapolis to go to a show. and that was a new thing for her. So that bonding experience for me felt really great and really important to have with a teenage girl who was going through it in her life, and to be able to have that to root her and to bond her to me was big.
Yeah, it's like I want to say it's like the family Bible, but it's not like the family Bible. It's like the family. I don't know. It's the family tradition or family. Maybe it's the family sports team. Almost like.
Yeah. That's sort of how it felt. Like the Christmas presents were Doomtree related, and it was the trips were all Doomtree related, and some really big life moments came because of Doomtree and Doomtree shows. I remember going to a Dessa concert. Dessa's one of the MCs in Doomtree, and she's amazing live. She's so good and so commanding, this huge presence on stage. And we went to a Dessa show with Caitlin, and a couple of things happened at that show that were really important. Number one, Caitlin was like holding her phone up and recording the show while watching the screen of her phone. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, put your phone away. If you want to watch this on your phone, you can do that tomorrow on YouTube. Like, all these other 50 people in here with their phones up, they're going to post that on the internet. So you'll be able to watch it if you want to see it that way. Right now, watch it through your eyeballs, instead of through your phone screen. And at first she's like, Dad, you just don't know, but she got the message. And then the next Dessa show she went to was only with Annalisa. I was out of town, and she didn't even take her phone into the venue. She left it in the car on purpose. And to me, that was huge. Like, we just had this one conversation about it. Once she put her phone away and watched the show, she got it. She felt that this was different than just having a record of having been there. And at the end of that first Dessa show, I introduced her to Dessa, who I had met a few times through hip hop. And I'm like, I've got my daughter's phone and I'm trying to take a picture with the two of them. And I'm like, I can't figure out how to work this camera, And Caitlin's getting really frustrated that I'm not working the camera correctly. And finally, Dessa just snatches the phone from me and takes this selfie with she and Caitlin. And it's this really amazing picture of my, I think she was 16 or 17 at the time, year-old daughter with the musician she most admired, and it's the musician taking a selfie of them. So she's got that photo that reminds her of this lesson of be present there for these events, for this art.
That's a fantastic story. Also, those concert videos and photos you take on your phone
they never
just
work.
Aren't that good. Yeah.
No.
So he's like, yeah, there they are. They're right there. See that little dot? It's like, yeah. And the audio is terrible. And yeah. Oh, that's great.
Here, a quick story. The first solo Dessa show I ever went to was with Annalisa. It was in Louisville, Kentucky at this little bar. And one of the most impressive things I've ever seen a rapper do. Annalisa loves to be at the front of the stage. So we have to be there early. We have to be standing in front of the stage before the rapper comes on. And then she raps at full force all the lyrics back at the person. It's really amazing to watch. You should see it sometime. But so we're up in the front of the stage. Dessa's performing. And this guy comes. He scoots in front of Annalisa. And he's like 6'6". He's all in white. He's got these bright white shoes on, super well dressed, and he's definitely trying to get Dessa's attention. And I'm pissed because he just walked in front of my, at the time, fiance. And I'm like, well, I'm not moving for you. So I'm crowding him, and I'm like stepping on his bright white shoes. And he's getting annoyed at me, but he won't take his attention away from Dessa. And Dessa comes down into the audience and is rapping. And he's getting really close to her. And without missing a beat, without getting off beat, she looks him in his face and says, "I'm glad that you're here, but you do not touch me." And she goes right back into the song. And everybody goes wild. And this dude turns bright red and slinks away. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen.
Wow. And then you didn't have to get in a fight with this big 6'6" guy.
Exactly, because it would have been a bad move on my part.
Oh man. Is there a Doomtree or one of the Doomtree artists' songs that's kind of shared between the three of you that is a like co-favorite, or is it just the entire collective and the experiences?
It's hard to pinpoint a co-favorite. If I were going to go with anything, it certainly is going to be a POS song. He's one of the MCs. He's my favorite MC from the group. Annalisa's favorite MC from the group. Maybe Caitlin's as well. And as far as which song, I'm not sure, but I would say maybe Fuck Your Stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's Caitlin's favorite. It's certainly one of mine. So,
do you think it's more of a lyrical relationship, or is it just musical or overall?
It's a feeling thing.
Okay.
He has this very in-your-face, but really clever and personable style. And especially if you see him perform, he's top 3 hip-hop performers I've ever seen. KRS-One, Dougie Fresh, POS. And he's so personable, but he's also saying things that are absolutely in your face, and you know you're guilty. That's sort of the feeling of a lot of his music. It's confrontational, but with a smile.
Huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting relationship to have with that stuff.
Yeah, it's really neat. We discovered years later, actually, and I have a photo of it somewhere, that Caitlin was going through an old notebook of hers from pre-Doomtree, like us discovering Doomtree together. And we had met POS when he was the merch guy at an Atmosphere booth at Scribble Jam. And he gave Caitlin a sticker that said, "POS ruined my life." And she had it on her notebook. And we were both like, wow, you met this dude years before we were listening to his music, you know.
When he was like the intern, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. Okay, this has been a great 5 things. What did you leave off the list?
Oh boy, I left a lot of things off this list. There was the thing I really wrestled with not putting on the list is actually a thing I don't like, and this is why I didn't put it on the list. It's not one of my favorites, but it's one of the most impactful pieces of writing I've ever read, and that was an article, I believe it was a men's journal, called "The Man Who Fell to Earth." It was a story about Todd Skinner shortly after he died. And when I was walking through an airport once, I saw it sitting in a magazine rack, and the cover said, "Death of the World's Greatest Rock Climber," or something like that. And I was like, I have to read this article because I want to know what they get wrong. I love reading articles from journalists who know nothing about the topic and totally sensationalize it so that I can just be like, wow, you're an idiot, you know? I read this article, and it's exactly what they do. They sensationalize rock climbing as if it's this adrenaline fueled, you know, extreme sport that everyone in it has a death wish, and Todd got what was coming to him. But when I opened the magazine, there was a painting as the like cover image, and the painting was beautiful. this really well executed watercolor of Todd falling with his harness clearly broken in the painting. And I thought I had this, struggle going on in my head because I'm like, wow, this is really well executed. It's beautiful. But at the same time, this guy had a family and friends. How do they feel about seeing this moment depicted, And shortly after reading that article, it stuck with me. I heard a song by a singer named Misty Murphy, and in the chorus of her song, she talks about endlessly floating. And while I was listening to her music, I was talking to a friend of mine, an artist friend of mine, and I asked him what he thought about this painting. I gave him a little bit of backstory. I'm like, what do you think about this? And as soon as I showed it to him, he said, well, he's not falling, he's floating. And I was like, wow, maybe he is. And then I used Misty's song. I sampled it. I made a new song out of it called Float. And that song brought me to Lander, Wyoming to perform at the Climbers Festival. It's where I live today. I met the woman I'm married to because of that song. She was the nanny for Todd Skinner, and his family introduced us. So seeing that article in that airport had dramatically changed the course of my life. But it's not one of my favorites. It's just something that had a dramatic impact, so it didn't make the list.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe this should be the 5 most important things. I don't know. That's yeah. And, well, okay, you just got 6 out of 5. That's yeah. Man, this has been fantastic. Thanks for doing this. I'll put in some notes where people can find your stuff and link to all the things we mentioned here. Which I think
Awesome.
is probably the best part about doing this, like getting recommendations from real human beings instead of algorithms,
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, this was such a fun exercise to have to think about the pieces of art that I've come into contact with that have really affected me, and have, created who I am today in a lot of ways. All of these things have little parts that are part of me.
I'm going to end there. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, man.